So, welcome to this episode of the Trend Detection podcast. I'm really delighted to have one of my lovely colleagues from Siemens on this episode, so Anja Adling, who I'll ask to introduce herself in a second. But today we're going to talk about predictive maintenance and how that and the view on that from a Siemens perspective, I guess. With Sensei still being very new to the family, we're now part of that, which is great. But yeah, I thought it'd be really good to have Anja on just to sort of broaden that perspective, I guess, because obviously we're very Sensei Predictive Maintenance dominated on this podcast. So I think now's the right time to sort of broaden that out and get the view from the wider Siemens. So you're representing the wider Siemens, Anja. I've just sort of put that on you. But yes, if you could just start by introducing yourself, that'd be really good.
Sure. So thanks for having me, Niall. My name's Anja Adling. I'm heading a group in the portfolio management for customer services in factory automation. And we're concerned with analytics services in general. And of course, energy management services is one aspect to it, but another very big aspect is the predictive maintenance part. And this is, well, how we came to Sensei and why this is such a close topic to me as I'm taking part in the integration of it into Siemens.
Yeah, and we'll certainly dive into that a bit more. I think that's a real interest where where Sensei fits in, I guess, with the rest of the sort of portfolio. But if we could just start with a little bit of background on yourself, Anja. So both within Siemens and outside of Siemens, I guess, or before Siemens, if there is a time before Siemens.
Actually, my connections with Siemens go back quite a long time. So before that, I was just a high school student. So really, I started my journey with Siemens in 2002 already in Berlin, where I'm actually from. And I was studying at the Siemens Technic Academy and got my associate engineer degree at the Siemens Professional Education. And this was really my first step into this big international world of Siemens. And then I said, okay, there's more to study. And I went outside of Siemens to study at the HTW in Berlin for business informatics. But I stayed in touch. So I had the possibilities to work as a working student with Siemens, also did an internship in New York with Siemens. So it didn't let go of me anymore. And then during my university studies, I learned that there's this really cool program, Siemens graduate program at Siemens, for graduates to really get a good view around the different parts of Siemens. So I really was working towards exactly doing this, and I had the chance to look into 3 different departments before I finally settled down with Siemens, let's call it like this. And ever since, I've held different positions in product management, also in business development for industrial network components, before actually joining then the customer services part in Siemens in 2019. And as predictive services were my field of responsibility back then, I got involved into the whole Sensei topic, starting with the due diligence and then really actually seeing the acquisition taking place and then now integrating. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's really interesting, and there's so many people I talk to have come into Siemens via that route. I mean, I guess, well, I mean, you're still at Siemens, so I guess you found it, a great success and a great route for your career as well. I know it's a bit of a side note to what we're talking about, but I just find that interesting that Siemens provides those opportunities as well.
And it's helpful because Siemens is such a big company, and it makes sense to kind of connect all the different dots within the organization. And it helps to have a personal network within the big organization. So this is what still motivates me and interests me to see at the different parts of the organization. What do people do there? How does it fit together with what I do? Can we make a connection? And that's really inspiring.
And I guess my question would be how is, like you said, you moved around, which I think is very sort of sensible approach, to get that broad understanding. But how has that helped you in your sort of role where you are today? Because I know you mentioned about building a network, but are there any other sort of benefits you've found around that?
Yeah, I mean, it's also a very international way to work. So that's also fascinating. So it's of course on the one hand side about technology, products, services, how they all fit together and create a complete picture from a customer perspective, right? So customer has various interests, and for them we are one Siemens, and we want to appear exactly like this. But of course, that requires some knowledge internally and cooperation internally. And as I said, it's the international part which is really fascinating. Not only looking in our own country, our own market, but really keep it open and learn from the different scenes or the different backgrounds of colleagues all over the world and the different regions.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and that's what we're sort of coming into from a 60-person company into that world is amazing. Slightly daunting, but also amazing to have that access to that network now of people and even internal events, let alone external events. You meet so many different colleagues and stuff. I think we've gone. Sensei's gone from a place of knowing everyone to getting used to not knowing everyone at Siemens, which is obviously
and still, in the end, you tend to keep meeting the same people over and over again with shared interests. After time, I think you automatically grow this network. And predictive maintenance, I mean, this is one of the hot topics, definitely. A lot of people are interested. It's closely connected to artificial intelligence, so another buzzword. So a lot of people are coming also towards us. So when they heard about the acquisition, a lot of people within Siemens reached out to me to learn more. So I think from my perspective, everyone was really welcoming Sensei into the company. We are really impressed by what has been created from your side, and we want to scale this even further.
Yeah, absolutely. We're off to a great start, I'd say. But when we say integration, I guess there was a point when the integration technically finished, but it sort of never does finish. I guess it's sort of an ongoing process
Exactly.
for all of us, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. Official legal merger was finalized by April 1st, but that's just the paperwork, maybe. But
Yeah.
real life goes on, and that's exactly where we are right now.
No, exactly. And I guess sort of just going back to what we were saying before about, because obviously you must have a massive interest in technology if Siemens was like the first port of call. But what sort of drove your interest in technology in general?
There's kind of this one picture I have in my mind when at home, I was, I don't know, 16, 17, something like this, we got our first PC at home. So it was this screen and the box below, and even my parents didn't really know what to do with it, but it was good to have one. And I was standing in front of this box, really wondering, there must be something we can do with it to improve our lives, to make things easier. And ever since, I was really driven by making use of this PC at home. And I was really looking out for ways to kind of start programming, coding. It was also the beginning of email. So I had an email address in 97. Not a lot of my friends did. So, I mean, what do you do with email if you don't know anyone to send emails to? But still, it was really fascinating me. And ever since, I was looking for ways, what can we do with PCs or computing technology in general. And another example, what still amazes me is these little smartphones, right? I mean, we have everything in the palm of our hand right here. Calendar, phone book, and the map, camera, photo album, music player, a dictionary, I don't know, encyclopedia even, and the phone. But it's everything here, and if you can do something with such a small box, so that's technology plus the internet, the connectivity that connects us all. It's just fascinating.
And I think I know the answer to this question, but do you still get that same buzz of excitement as you did when you were a small child with
I
the
do,
strange box?
yeah. I mean, did you feel it? Like I had this smartphone, but it's everything to me, really. And I'm sure there's still more things to come that we're not aware yet. But yeah, in this sense, AI, the ChatGPT possibilities, this is something with great potential also ahead of us. So I'm watching this closely as well, what we can do in the future with that.
No, exactly. And I guess partly what we're trying to do at Siemens is to provide all of that. All these various different products doing wonderful things, but to provide that all in one place. Well, we could say in one phone or one device. All at a touch of a hand or whatever.
Yeah, or I mean, combining different parts of technology into great solutions. I mean, in the end, a customer who does a predictive maintenance project with us or starts their predictive maintenance journey with us, I mean, the target they have is not to have this technology, it's to generate value out of it, to get value out of it. Of course, that's in the end what drives us. But I'm fascinated by how we get there, how we achieve that, and to support exactly in this journey and make it easier, faster, and yeah, try to standardize it more. Because still today, I mean, we're all kind of learning, assembling. Technology is still growing and improving there. So it's really, I feel it. It's a journey. It's not a fact that there is, but it's progress.
And that was a very important point, what you mentioned there. It's about the value. I mean, technology's all, and we talk about it on this podcast and with Sensei and everything else, that it's more than just technology. It's not just, here's the great technology. And that's another reason why we don't although we're in the sort of AI analytics or section, let's say, or place within that, we don't overly talk about it in, say, marketing. We don't push that, because what we're pushing at, not pushing, but promoting is the outcomes to the customer, which obviously is they care about. Obviously, a lot are, particularly ChatGPT, very interested in the AI topic, but we're still, I guess, of a view that that's lesser important. They don't need to know how the algorithm works and how all that. They can do. We've got the experts who can explain that, but really they don't need to. It's like, does it do what it do? Does it deliver outcomes for your business, etc.? And that's what we try and focus on. That, well, as you know, I'm sort of telling you what you already know, really, but it's just interesting you mentioned that as well.
Yeah, and I mean, of course, it's in the end, it's always being more efficient, having more availability, and so on. But everybody is saying that, So I always like to at least get a glimpse behind the scenes. What's the reality behind these promises? So for me, it's both. Of course, focusing on the value, what's the intention, but I always want to know at least how. So
Yeah.
I can't hide that technology part in the end. I like to find out about it, and I like to talk about it as well. Yeah.
I guess that's what happens when you put a product and a marketing person in the same conversation. I mean, I'm interested in the technology as well, but I guess I'm coming at it from a slightly different angle, so I can appreciate what you're saying. So actually, going back to, obviously you said you worked different parts of Siemens. So when did you sort of become part of predictive services, and what was sort of the market landscape, for want of a better phrase? When did you first hear of that phrase, predictive maintenance, and how did predictive services evolve, either from that or because of that? Well, yeah.
Yeah, so as I said, I was formerly heavily involved in product business, like really boxes with, well, firmware on them, but boxes. And I wanted to change a little bit that, and the perspective that changed was getting into services, treating service portfolio as products. So this was something new I wanted to try out and want to see how that works. And really, that's the time when we discovered predictive maintenance as one of the products or areas for which we created services and solutions. And so this was since 2019. And not long after that, when we looked at the market, we came in there actually with very application specific solutions. So we had predictive services for presses, predictive services for depending machines in the electronics. But we had these because we also learn and go step by step. But we found out, well, a customer usually has more than one machine, more than one application, maybe even complete lines, or want to look at the complete factory. And there we were kind of still not there yet. But Sensei was there, or Sensei could be there. And this is, when I learned about it, really looked at what Sensei can do, and we also tried or actually did some pilots in factories of Siemens to see how it actually works. So this is how I came into touch with Sensei, and after time the idea came up, well, wouldn't it be great if we could be the ones having this technology or helping promote and scale up on the market?
Yeah, no, exactly. And I guess what were uh, those predictive services products? So, like you said, very asset or machine specific.
Mhm,
So,
mhm.
was there was it? I guess it must have been customer driven why those particular products were created, right? Was it customer driven? A customer need?
Of course, I mean, yeah, I mean, we wouldn't just sit in the lab and think, okay, what can we create today? No, it was really driven by concrete customer requirements or customers who were having an issue and were looking for a solution, and we developed it together with them. So for services that didn't exist before, you cannot just create them. It's a journey to develop them, and it cannot be done without an actual real application or real customer behind. We don't have an automotive press in the lab. That just it's just not reality. So and when you work in such an agile approach, I mean, having a pilot, trying things out first before it actually becomes a standardized product, um, you can do only so many pilots at the same time. You cannot cover everything, and there was also the time when cloud technology got bigger. So for us, it's back then it was called MindSphere. Now it's Insights Hub, which was one of the big trends where there was infrastructure, but I mean. The target was always to make use of this infrastructure to create application, to create value for customer. So that's one of the technology drivers I would say was part of this whole journey. And the second infrastructure technology aspect now is the industrial edge technology, and yeah, that we are also trying to look at, because not every customer is very happy about cloud computing, or maybe there's just some carefulness still because it's new. So industrial edge is really one of the other drivers that we listen to a lot, because it makes sense to do the computing of data that's close to the machine, do it close to the machine. And this was one of the aspects we still see a lot of development going on.
And actually, for those who might not know what it is, could you explain a little bit what industrial edge is and what sort of benefits are versus cloud, for example?
Okay, so edge in general is the architecture close to the machine, close to the shop floor. And at Siemens, we have our own ecosystem growing, which is called Industrial Edge. So this is actually the product name. And it means having computing power directly on site. And the advantages of this is, of course, if you have a lot of data, you have this locally. You don't have to send loads of data via the internet. So it's cheaper to do it directly on site. There's less latency, of course, because you have the data where they are needed. And of course, it's a matter of privacy. You don't expose the data outside of your site. So these are, let's say, the benefits to do local computing. On the other hand, cloud has their advantages too, starting from the big chance to scale. You don't need to buy big computers right away, but you have the resources available if you want them. So this is something, Edge is very dedicated, but cloud gives you a lot of performance to scale in terms of computing power or also storage, and having global access to it. So again, there's always benefits and to each option. But yeah, when edge is very private and closed, cloud gives a lot more perspective and more opportunities.
And I get, is there? I mean, there's obvious reasons why cloud, like some companies, might be reluctant to embrace clouds. But are you seeing? Have you seen over your career a shift in terms of attitude? Even though not every not every organisation may be on board for various reasons, but has there been a shift over the past, say, 5 years, even?
I think so. But still, the market is very different. You always find some of the first movers who are keen on trying out new things. And yeah, one of the examples, even within Siemens, is that we now use cloud storage. Everybody uses cloud storage right now. And if I change my PC hardware after 5 years, I just had to do this recently, there's not much trouble to change because my data is stored safely in the cloud and I can just access it again even with a new PC. So sometimes we might not even be aware how much cloud helps us improve our lives or make things easier and available at all times.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's another sort of part of what makes Sensei sort of unique or special in terms of that it doesn't matter what the data source is. So you're not sort of tied into certain providers or or products, I guess, or systems that kind of thing. It sort of broadens that as well. Because I guess you might be limiting yourself potentially by keeping your data locked down on site.
Yeah, and I don't talk about it much, or I don't think about it much, but of course there's various security measures in place to still make it a reasonably secure way to do this. So this is also something. So for Sensei, you don't need to send every data that there is in the factory to Sensei. It's really dedicated data for condition of the machines. So again, this is also, it's not the same as exposing business figures and innovations or inventions or something like this. So there's also difference in quality of data, what there is that's being used to analyze. And in this sense, condition data for machines, it's fairly okay, I think. And the benefits are greater than the risks from my perspective.
Yeah, I guess it'd be hard for someone on the outside, I guess, if that data, did get into the wrong hands for whatever reason, they'd have a hard time actually getting any meaningful business, like in any secret insights into that, I guess. But I guess it's just for certain industry and certain companies, it's just part of an overall. It might just be an overall attitude towards cloud or standing point. So they can't be like cloud's fine for this, but not for that. I don't know, or don't know what it's like from your experience.
Yeah, sometimes it's just kind of the initial reaction, cloud, ooh, that's open, that's risky. But sometimes it's just worth it to think about it again and distinguish the different levels or qualities of data about which we talk. So I think it's helpful to take some time to consider this and really find a way to come to a conclusion that it might make sense actually, or the risks are low enough. So I think even though the first reaction can be different, many times I've already seen this kind of shift of understanding or kind of the development of these thoughts towards a pragmatic approach in the end.
Yeah, exactly. It's not just it's all listening to the the potential ways to approach it rather than just dismissing it because it's cloud, so we definitely can't do that. There might there should be a room to sort of think about logically how it could work and how it could benefit.
Exactly.
Yeah. And it's interesting you mentioned data. So again, with Sensei particularly, and we're actually launching a report very soon about this, about data and cultural maturity and how important that is. And we've sort of done we've got some data on how the market, how mature the companies are in both of those areas. But I don't, from a sort of data collection perspective, have you seen the data quality improve over time? One thing that I've observed going to events and talking to people is that they've sort of a lot of companies are collecting data because Industry 4.0 sort of encourage people to do that. But then there's a lot of companies are at a point where they're like, well, I've got all this data, but like, what do I do? What do I do with it? How can I get any insights from it? So I'd be interested to get your perspective on that.
I mean, the world is colorful, and I think there's, for every possible stage, there's some customers who are exactly at this stage. But but I mean, right now we're kind of at a cross point. I think right now we're still looking at the majority of brownfield installations, and they might have been built 20, 15, 10 years ago. And back then, people didn't consider collecting the data as much. But these applications or these factories are still running and in place. And for them, it might be a huge effort to put additional sensors or collect the data from the PLCs inside. Um, so for them, that's still a journey to go through. But all the green fields that are being built right now, for them, it's natural to kind of have all the data available. And I think this will change over the next 5 to 10 years. That it's state of the art to have data easily accessible. It needs some more work on standardization and data formats and APIs and so on. But in general, this is becoming less and less a problem. But right now, yes, we have to take care about the situation as is and address the brownfields. And this is really something where Siemens come in with their expertise, and that's actually a service to consult with the customers. We know the technology in general, automation principles, and so on, but it is work to get the data out of these automation systems right now. Yeah.
And when you say brownfield, again, what do you mean by that exactly?
Well,
Just for
that's
people who don't know.
existing infrastructure, something that's maybe 10 years old or so. It's there, it's productive, the machine is producing the parts as it's supposed to. But back then, when it was being designed, it wasn't such a big topic to collect temperature or current or pressure data or whatever that is that describes the condition of the machine. So this is something, an existing plant from our perspective or in our vocabulary, that's a brownfield plant. And yeah, we have to individually look at it together with the customer to see what's the potential. Maybe some of the data is available within the PLCs, just nobody ever asked for it. And it's not such a big problem after all to get it out of there. And in other cases, it's necessary to install additional sensors to get this data. That's something that needs to be looked at, and that's where we can help the customers identify and see the potential that they actually have with their existing machines.
And I guess I don't know whether this is the case, but when there's new factory or new plants being created, are they already? I guess they're thinking about that's the difference, and they're already thinking at that stage. Oh, we need to add, connectivity and sensors and collect data from the very start. I guess that's how it's changed over the past few years, rather than
Exactly.
retrospectively having to install hardware.
Yeah. That's really right now. It's state of the art for a PLC to have connectivity MQTT, for example, right? Or OPC UA. These are the standard features that are available now, and every new plant or machine that's being created has this when they use the current technology. So we don't have to think as much about it anymore because it's a given. It is then there. But the bigger section, as I said, of the market is the existing industry, and that's why we need to focus on the brownfields right now.
Yeah. So do you envisage a day when data is perfect and it can just you go to a customer site and the data's all ready to go and off we
So
go?
what do you need? Yeah. Yeah.
So I guess and I guess it's an ongoing sort of educational piece, of course, because again there's that gap sometimes where customers think their data's better than what it is, but then they sometimes think it's a lot worse than what it is as well. So I think there's always going to be a little bit of unknown there, I guess, on both sides, I guess.
And I remember this one incident when I was at a customer who has a big automotive press, and they have their maintenance personnel there, and this kind of old guy told me, well, I put my hand on the press and I feel exactly what's going on with the press. So why do I need a PC to do that for me? Why would a PC replace me? So he was really kind of proud of his knowledge, which is understandable. but is he able to be there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week? And that's the difference. Of course, humans have this expertise, but the computers can take away some of the burden to always be there. And this is kind of, for me, that was eye-opening. I didn't want to insult him and say that he's useless, not at all. But it's normal. He's a human, and he cannot be there all the time, but computers can. So that's a good typical picture for me for predictive maintenance. Of course, you use the knowledge of the experts who deal with these machines every day, and you have a way to kind of capture this knowledge and make it available to more people and lift some of the work off their shoulders, but that they just have to be there.
Yeah, no, it's a really interesting story. I guess the other way to, from a Sensei perspective, it's sort of saying, could you do that for like 1,000 machine?
Yeah, yeah,
Obviously, your machine better than probably anyone else or whatever. But can you do that? There's not thousands of you to do that. So it's about.
yeah.
It's interesting. That was the attitude was, I know it won't replace me because I know it well, and that's why I guess there's got to be a shift in attitude that it's not just the technology is there to assist, and it's still, again, talking Sensei specific, but it's still we still require, or for the software to really take off, is the human or the maintenance person's insight as well. So we're not just relying on what the data and the technology is saying, but it's also, that's another key part of it. It's what feedback we get from the maintenance person too that drives the success of the tool.
Yeah, at Siemens, we're always talking about combining the real and the digital world. And I think Sensei is a good example for this because we provide information based on data, so that's more the digital world. But in the end, I mean, there's a physical machine, and a person has to get to this machine and perform whatever maintenance that's necessary. But having this feedback then fed back to Sensei creates even better support. And in this sense, I find it a very good example of combining the real and the digital world with predictive maintenance and Sensei.
And are you seeing that sort of attitude that you described from that example? Is that sort of changing? The technology is not like a scary thing to take anything away, but it's there to assist. Is that you're seeing a trend in particular, I guess, predictive maintenance, if you want to go specific about it?
Yeah, I guess we're still in that transition phase from the old world to the new world. So some are there already, and others still have to learn that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's almost because I was speaking to a colleague the other day. I think did a site visit for a prospect recently, and I think there was a room full of people, and it was a mixture of sort of younger. Well, I'm not saying it's a young or old thing because again, we've got another customer who, someone's just retired, but he's very on board with Sensei and he's doing everything. So it's certainly not an age thing, but there was different. I wouldn't even say age actually. I'll change that. It's not age. It's just different mindsets. Like half the room could be very much like, what, why do we need this, or why are we doing all this, and the other half are like, know the value of technology straight away and want to embrace it and see how it can help improve their again make their jobs easier, which is essentially what we're trying to do.
And every time a moment where that happens, this effect, cool, if I can get rid of this, I don't know, cumbersome tasks and automate it, and I have more time to focus on other stuff, I really enjoy experience these moments together in the conversations.
And that's again, talk about culture a lot, but that again, that's again how a platform's not just technology, but it's also a way to at least assist or drive cultural change as well. So to sort of shift that mindset, it's not magic. You won't do it by magic. It requires sort of effort on. It has to be said on the customer side as well. But if they're on board and willing to do that and put all their sort of get behind the idea, basically and multiple stakeholders getting behind the idea, then it can actually drive that cultural change throughout the business.
And as technology driven as we are within Siemens, this is really something we cannot state often enough, that it's also about culture change, and that we help our customers transition. And this is something, again, why it's service, why it's not just selling an app. It's really something where we can support the customers in experiencing, learning, and changing their behavior with the help of technology.
Yeah, and actually, sort of slightly linked to that as well, because I think obviously digital transformation is another big sort of topic, and I guess from my point of view, sort of predictive maintenance. Obviously, it's from it's a big focus to me is predictive maintenance, but actually, it's just a small part of a wider digital transformation strategy. So I'm just wondering, from your point of view, Anja, how does predictive maintenance fit into the overall picture, how could it fit into the overall picture of the digital transformation strategy?
So, I mean, customers are at different stages, but for example, if there's a customer really at the beginning of a digital transformation, I would recommend in having one of the first steps is getting an overview of the overall equipment effectiveness, really to have these. So that's the combination of availability, of the quality of the products, and the output of the machines that they achieve. If a customer gets clarity on these three factors, that's something where they can start kind of setting up an app, cloud-based or edge-based. So it's kind of an easy start with a limited scope, but getting acquainted with all the mechanisms of cloud or edge technology, connectivity, and so on. And this is a good starting point. Once they know where they're at, once they have transparency of their KPIs, then they can look a step further. Well, what do I want to improve? And then how can I improve it? And then they would come, for example, to predictive maintenance in order to improve availability. But there are other scenarios when it comes, for example, for quality, that they could automate quality inspection or look at the process that leads to certain quality results and how this can be improved. So these are other areas, not exactly predictive maintenance, but close enough when it comes to production. Of course, there's also these offerings within Siemens.
Yeah, and it's interesting where you say that predictive maintenance isn't necessarily right at the start of the journey, which I think is a fair enough point. But it's interesting, especially at say Hannover Messe, which a couple of months ago, talking to people, and there's people I guess just asking about predictive maintenance in general who may be earlier in their let's say earlier in their journey. It's good they're starting to think about it, but I'm just wondering. I lost my train of thought. I might have to cut that bit. What was I going to say?
Yeah, but for example, predictive maintenance, some people I talk to tell me, this is a concept known for a long time already. I mean, this is nothing new. And then I can, yes, agree to the concept itself, to measure something before it actually breaks down, yes. But the difference now is, I would say, again, technology. To have the data, to have the connectivity, to have cloud access. This is something that wasn't as advanced 10 or 20 years ago. So this is really the difference now to the early starts of predictive maintenance. So even though the term, the buzzword is the same, it gets a new meaning, or it has other possibilities nowadays with the state-of-the-art technology that we have yet.
I mean, I often hear that predictive maintenance as a term is something that even goes back to like the 1980s or something like that.
Yeah,
I'm sure
yeah,
someone
yeah.
mentioned that. Yeah, so it's not brand new, but you're right. What's different now is the technology and things like AI. Let's say
How you can realize it. Yeah, the concepts may be old, but making them reality, that's really a different game now.
Yeah, no, exactly. And in terms of actually talking of AI, more generally and outside of what Sensei does, but how, and obviously it's a big buzzword as you mentioned as well, but how is it sort of impacting industry at the minute, like industrial manufacturing industry? What are you seeing at the moment?
What are the big topics in
Yeah,
manufacturing? Or
yeah. With AI, what are the big topics? What's making the biggest impact AI wise in the manufacturing space?
Maybe when I think of, let's say, the global situation and supply chain interruptions that we had experienced in the last 2 to 3 years, I think there's some potential there to help support the availability of supplies in the supply chain. So this is something definitely that a lot of manufacturers are affected by, and try to find solutions how to solve that. Um, yeah, and again, getting rid of these boring jobs, or maybe very challenging jobs. For example, when I think of quality inspection, I mean, I've seen it. There's people in the car manufacturing, they have to really concentrate and look at a car to see the paint code, if the paint code is good. This cannot be a very convenient job. And if we can take these, if a computer or a system or AI can take care of that instead of a human, I think I consider this a relief. And so get rid of these boring, repetitive tasks that people are not meant to do anyway. So this is really something, um, not just automating kind of the controlling, but also inspections. I think these are a lot of topics that can be solved in a different way now.
Yeah, I think, and in terms of what Sensei does as well, we're not saying monitoring your machines is probably not getting rid of boring jobs, but it's just, again, it's making life easier, just giving more visibility, but not just on a line level, a plant level, but even, a global level. It sort of gives a global view, and then at that point it becomes more about collaboration across. Because I don't know, often, well, you'll know as well, Anya, but um, customer or plants, different sites work quite often in isolation. They're not sort of joined up, which to some a bit, not all organisations, I should say, but in a lot of cases that's the case, and it makes scaling predictive maintenance challenging. But if you can get a driving force within that and get that scalability, then the results are there from a Sensei perspective as well.
Yeah, it helps sharing the knowledge between those who have similar problems or similar questions. And I think that's always interesting. So even you mentioned Hanover Fair, it's interesting to discuss with competitors, because I mean there's only so many people having the same questions, or talking about these topics. So and that's, I think it is helpful for plants to interact with other plants from other sites, because they have the same questions, and ideally they can share the answers between them. That's motivating. That inspires.
Yeah, exactly. And again, it all flows into sort of a culture of just collab. I mean, I don't think any organisation would say they don't want a culture of open, collaboration and openness. I mean, it'd be great. You have a pump over here or a pump over, and you could just compare the two and have a discussion. And I guess one day that's maybe where Sensei will go as well. It'll be you. I'm just imagining this. I'm not leading the product roadmap or anything, but where you can mention people and say, "Oh, you should see this. I had a really interesting case. I thought you would.
Mhm.
I know you had a similar one, a couple of weeks ago. That what do you think of this kind of thing?" And I mean, that's I guess that's what we're looking to build. It's almost like a community. A community, really. It's a global community,
Yeah.
and trying to break down some of those silos, both technology silos and, let's say, cultural silos. That doesn't sound too strange.
Yeah, and you were mentioning in the beginning that some customers just collect all the data, or a certain set of more or less random data, having big data. Well, that's not valuable to have just any data. But if you take predictive maintenance as your intention, then you think about what kind of data you collect, and over time, you might still discover new insights from the collected data, but has already been very focused data collection, let's say. So I think there's even better potential once the data is there, and you can always take the data and look back into it, and find even more about it, and not just big data where somebody can look for something which they don't even know what they are looking for. So I think that gives also a good prospect for the future, by performing or implementing predictive maintenance now. but having this dedicated data collection also available.
So is that another sort of common misconception about the amount of data you need to do effective sort of predictive
Yeah, I would
maintenance?
say so. It's easy to collect just any data, but it's really, if I have a drive full of files, it's impossible to make use of it. But if it's dedicated, if it's structured in a certain way, it's a lot easier to find what you're looking for. So yeah, a while ago it was all about big data, but I think we've come back from that approach more into a dedicated, focused data collection. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just wondering how Siemens as a whole, how we can sort of help educate a little bit on that and sort of turn minds. I guess we can't on a it's difficult to do that completely, but I guess what are those steps that we can take to help educate? I guess it's on a project by project basis, isn't it? So often we start
Yeah.
on one site, and maybe the education is actually for future and the next site or the next line or the next whatever. Is that's where the education comes in? It's like, well, actually, you don't need a lot of data, and then it sort of expands from there, and then they move to another organisation. Then it's sort of a ripple effect like that. That's the way I would see it, anyway.
Yeah, and still I understand that it's not just something we can tell people it is like this. They have to experience it themselves. In the end, I mean, you can show a lot of demos, but every customer in the end they wants to see it with their machines, with their plant, you know. So I can understand that in the end, it's probably most helpful and most convincing to start with a dedicated project, but the individual customers, yeah, plant and machinery, and then take it from there. And I mean, we might even discover that in the past they have collected a lot of data and everything, and then after a while they learn they don't have to collect everything and strip it down to what's relevant. But then getting more machines connected. So thinking of the scale aspect again. Um, Maybe they only did it with the new machines, but then they can learn that it makes sense not to collect all the data, but specific dedicated data and extend it even to more machines and maybe even more older machines when they see the value. Yeah.
Okay, I guess in some ways, the best projects are the ones where a customer is open to learn about these things, is open to be educated about these things, or they may have gone through a previous pilot or project which failed for a number of reasons. So they're already coming in with their own experience of it. I guess that's what you're saying, isn't it? So they've lived it, as it were. We're not, because again, it should never be about. I think there's a few podcasts we talked about this before, where a vendor, I think the vendor and the customer need to know what they need to do in order for it to be a success. Like the vendor can't do everything, but
Yeah.
of course the customer can't do everything either.
Yeah, of course. The ideal is to have a real collaboration, vendor and customer together, and driving these projects together, identifying responsibilities and tasks that need to be done, but working on it together and coming to success. That's
And
at least what we strive for. Yeah.
but yeah, no, exactly. And I was wondering whether you might have heard the concept that we have within Sensei's the sort of like having a champion user or
Mm.
person responsible, and you might have experienced it in other projects as well. In your experience, is that a key to it? Having one at least, but we say one. It's good to have as many as possible, obviously. But if you've got at least one person driving it forward internally, and with the support of a vendor like Siemens, we can help them to build the business case and to deliver the project and scale the project and all that kind of thing. But is that a key to it, to success as
I
well?
think so, yes. And I really like the word champion. It suggests already somebody really great.
Mm.
And so I think that's exactly what's needed. It's not just technology you place there, and if nobody knows what to do with it, then it's just a stupid box. And yeah, having a champion driving this, trying it out, talking about the experience with the colleagues and being some sort of a multiplicator, this is really, I think, the recipe for success. Yes.
I guess the other point to that is stakeholder engagement, where again from previous experience, it's projects where you might just talk to the maintenance team, and then the IT team come in towards the end, and they're not aware of what's been discussed, and then because they've been out of the loop, they're like, well, we're not going to do this, we've got our own solution. Or the other way around, where in some companies where tools are sort of enforced on employees as well, like in this case we're talking predictive maintenance, it's like on a maintenance team, this is the tool you must use. But I guess again, to your point about collaboration, it's about bringing those people together, so there's an understanding from all different areas of the business which are
Yeah.
affected by this. They understand the value it can bring to them and the organization as a whole.
Yeah, and we also often use this term IT/OT convergence. So it is IT technology or practices moving closer together with machinery and the field field devices. And these are also different people being responsible for that and bringing these together. Predictive maintenance really is such a case where you need to bring IT and OT people together on one conference desk and really from the beginning by driving these projects so that everybody knows what's the target and understands what's their part in it. And you're absolutely right, IT needs to be integrated really in the early beginning already.
Yeah, and again, we're not talking about one being more important than the other
No,
either.
not at all. They need to work together. Yeah, the same way as vendor and customer need to work together, but it's also within the different departments of the customer that are relevant to the complete solution or the complete project. Yeah.
I guess sometimes the angle you have to think about, and I've talking to different customers, because some organisations are very much IT led, so IT lead the procurement, and it might involve the maintenance, but it's led by IT. But on the other side, it could be led by OT. But I guess it doesn't matter which angle it comes from, as long as the two are sort of involved and working together on it, I guess is the key, isn't it? It's not about who's leading what, but the end result.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, in the end, what counts are the results, and you have to measure this somehow and make it transparent. But once you have these figures, you saved over 1 year with Sensei, you saved, I don't know, 1,000 hours of downtime. This is something everybody can see, everybody can agree on, and I think each department then has their own understanding and sees the success out of it.
Yeah, and again, that's another important role within the say a Sensei project is helping to share those successes internally as well, or giving them the tools and the data and everything they need to be able to present that, not just for a business case to scale, for example, but just general good feeling. I mean, who doesn't want to
Yeah,
celebrate
yeah.
big successes? And I guess the other thing we've seen, more interestingly, is customers or people who've had that champion. I guess they have that champion tag attached to them because they're the ones driving it, but their careers actually progressed as a result. Not maybe you
Yeah,
can't put it all down to Sensei because I'm sure they've done a little bit towards it as well. But it's just interesting how cultural change goes beyond that. It's actually retention and growth of employees as well, which is an interesting point, I thought.
absolutely.
Yeah. So I just wanted to move. I know we dropped in Sensei a little bit, and you talked a little bit about how you first sort of came across Sensei. I don't know whether you wanted to expand on that at all, Anja. That your first thoughts on Sensei when you first came across Sensei, what was, and just anything around that really.
Yeah, it was really this whole new potential that's now available when you get rid of having to focus on specific applications or having to focus on specific vendors. I mean, yes, at Siemens we have a lot of components in the manufacturing industry that we sell, but yes, come on, in reality customers have other products too, and that Sensei is just so open to it. As long as the data is there, it doesn't matter from which vendor it comes. That's just, it's huge in opening up and making it more real and making it more accessible to customers. So this is really something I remember being envious about, first of all, and now really being proud of it that now that Sensei is part of Siemens. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's been a natural progression because, like I said, there's been Sensei's been deployed in Siemens plants. It's been a partner with Insights Hub or MindSphere as it was then as well. So there was already a sort of good connection there already. I guess each other
Yeah.
knew each other very well already, which sort of made it even more of a natural fit.
Yeah, and I'm so happy with every success that I see also in the plants when they yeah identify that it's valuable to them. I just share their joy in the sense. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's even I mean, what we also see, especially when you see particularly, we talk about different stages of digital transformation, but the ones who sort of pick up the baton and, and are immediately using Sensei and the knowledge platform as well. There's a customer who actually started using that almost very, very early on themselves. So not guided. Usually it's guided a little bit by Siemens or Sensei experts, but they sort of took upon themselves to do it. And I guess that's where we want all customers to be. Sorry, at that sort of maturity stage of um, they understand predictive maintenance, they understand the project, and they just get the platform and the cultural side and the data side immediately. So they're sort of going off on their own and creating their own sort of way of doing things using the technology.
Yeah, and again, the world is diverse, and some people have a really good connection, good sense of what to do and how to do it, and others need more support. And in the end, ideally, we can support all of them with as little or as much support that they need. And yeah, it's okay. Lost track here.
That's okay.
What were we talking? Yeah.
That's okay. Um, so it's yeah, about so I was mentioning before about cultural sort of the maturity of a customer being able to sort of go off and start doing stuff themselves. I mean, and some need more guidance than others because we're talking about different stages. That helps.
Yeah. Okay. And maybe we need to be very honest about this. For others, it's really easy and they just go ahead and do it. But it's not always easy. And still, I think there's a lot of, or a good chance that a customer can succeed. So, this is something I want to be open about. It might require some initial project work to get it all set up. But thinking about the future, changing the maintenance processes, maybe also driven by the need of lack of maintenance experts that might not be available anymore in the future when they go to retire. So this is also something um, you need to invest first before you actually see results. But the experience shows that it is possible and it is doable. And this is sometimes really helping to go through these tough patches of the journey.
Yeah, and I guess what we've seen is somebody's my train of thought now. Yeah, might have to scrub that bit. Cut. Where should we start from? Oh yeah. So in terms of, I guess I mean the benefit. Well, I guess what I'd be interested in terms of Sensei coming in and now fully integrated as part of Siemens, but where can Siemens help? You know, as we said earlier on about scaling Sensei across. We talked about how Sensei can fit in with Siemens customers who use other types of competitor hardware and all that kind of thing. But
Mm.
the other way around, there's huge benefits too, right?
Yes, so as I said, sometimes it can be quite a challenge to get to the data. So that's the part where Siemens brings in the know-how um, in automation in general, or what are the typical protocols or architectures being used within the shop floor, how to retrieve the data from there. And that's exactly Siemens expertise coming in helping these projects to be implemented, and then it's a perfect handover to Sensei where the actual analytics of the data is happening, including really also the feedback loops and collecting knowledge over time, not just data, but actual knowledge. So I think this is a perfect combination of our strengths.
Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah, absolutely. We both bring a lot to the table, and that's where, yeah, it just seems like I said before, it's quite a natural fit from my point of view as well. So just as we sort of come to the end, I wanted you to sort of look in a crystal ball type fashion and see where predictive maintenance technology, or let's say, digital transformation or anything in that sort of AI, it could be, but where do you see that sort of heading over the next sort of 5 to 10 years? And I know things change a lot in 5 years, so it could be maybe you stick to 5 years if it tends to.
Yeah, I wouldn't put a year label on it, but I think I briefly touched it already before. There's a lot of potential in the fact that once a customer has set up a system for predictive maintenance, really dedicating or collecting dedicated data, and not just the time series of the condition of the machines, but also putting this context knowledge more and more in a structured format. So meaning to associate events or root causes or helpful measures to the actual cases that are being raised with Sensei. So time is really something that provides more potential. After 2 or 3 years that a customer has collected exactly this data, it leads to a new evolutionary step, I would call it, that it's not only that the customer gets information, okay, there might be something wrong, but get more input to it. So the reason might be this and that, and the measure to help out with this is the following. So this is what we call prescriptive maintenance, not just telling something is going to break, but giving even more information to take the guesswork out of the maintenance person who is being presented with the case. Okay, something might be wrong with the machine. Go check for it. So that's something I think it will happen automatically over time, and this is just driving forward what we have right now. Completely new cases. It's also looking for me into a crystal ball. I couldn't dare to say that, but just this really evolutionary step, using the exact same data, but combining them and collecting them over time, it already leads to more potential also.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And actually, I just thought of a final sort of thing. So we talked a lot about organisations being at different stages of their sort of digital transformation journey, but so it might be hard to generalise this. But if someone was looking to implement predictive maintenance tomorrow, what are the sort of, let's say, 3 things they need to think about first?
Yeah, I mean, ideally, it's let me say it's a maintenance person or maintenance manager who's responsible for a certain factory, and they have ideally already some records of what were their failures in the past. So they might even know which are the most critical machines, what are typical failure patterns. So this is already a really good starting point, because then you can make some assumptions of what's the value behind. So that's really already giving a good starting point compared to, for example, greenfield, where there's no experience with the machines from the past anyway. So knowing what are typical failures, ideally also what does that mean in terms of cost, or how much maintenance budget do I spend at the moment. These are some good factors already to base a decision on, to let's start with a project to transform maybe the maintenance processes. If then this customer also has some of this big data collection already available, that some time ago management might have decided it's good to collect data. Ideally, the relevant data is already there, and nobody has to install additional sensors or so, but it might be the case that simple measures, simple indicators are already available, such as current or temperature. So something that's available in the PLC or even in a dedicated historian. So these are also good good starting points that lead to fast success or fast results, at least, that can then be used to base a decision on to extend this project. And then, yes, also it makes sense to start with a sensible amount of assets that are being monitored, because within that trial period, you want to see some failures, right? You want to have a basis to well, determine was it useful or not. And so it's probably with one or two machines that you want to monitor, chances are not so high. So it's probably a bigger number you should have in mind to start out. Not just thousands right away, but I don't know, maybe 50 to 100 assets is a good starting point, I would say. So if you have these, let's say, 3 facts kind of available for a discussion, that would be ideal point to talk with a customer and start out a predictive maintenance project.
Perfect. And that was even more perfect because that wasn't on the list. So I sort of put you on the spot a little bit there. So I was just
No
testing
problem.
you see. Awesome.
Yeah.
No, that's great. No, so I think we've come towards the end, but it's been really great to chat. And thank you for sort of taking the time out. To talk these things through. It's really interesting. I'm really excited to see where the journey continues. Like I say, the integration doesn't stop on the 1st of April. It sort of ongoing and continues and upwards, definitely. So, looking forward to seeing what happens. So thank you for your time, and we'll see everyone on the next episode.